Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, today I want to talk about how you can glance at a chart and get some very profound meanings out of it without knowing any astrology. So, how is that possible? Well, this is a very basic technique. And I just want everyone to be able to have this little simple tool. And it's about looking at patterns in a chart. So before I progress into how I do this, I always want to remind everyone to sign up for my free newsletter, which you can find that on my website, which is galacticcenter.org. And while you're there, check out my beautiful spiritual jewelry. And if you want to learn Vedic astrology, go to my university website. It is an amazing way to learn Vedic astrology. We have so many interesting and cool people, all part of this university that you will meet. And that is University of Vedic Astrology.com. So how are these patterns in a chart significant? They are so significant. The very first thing that when you pick up and look at a chart and you see planets, look for the patterns, such as the most important thing that I think that's in this pattern that will tell you enormous information is look where the moon is and look where all the other planets are. If the moon sits away from all the other planets, then you know that this person feels isolated, emotionally unsupported, and alienated in some way, especially when they're growing up, maybe with their parents. In some way, they may have all the love and attention, but they still feel unsupported some way. It's true. Everyone that has, I call it an isolated moon. The moon sits on one side of the chart and all the other planets are away from it, at least one sign away. So the moon sits with no planets in the same house or on both houses on both sides of the moon. That's an isolated moon. And that's really that's going to tell you so much. Another thing is if you see the Rahu and Ketu, if you see them and they look like, I always tell people that don't know astrology, they look like a horseshoe, you know, the U horseshoe, or a headset. And one sits upright and one sits upside down. They're always opposite from each other, exactly. And if you find that all the planets are on one side of those two nodal axes, which, you know, you can just draw a line from one to the other. If you see all the planets on one side, then guess what? That person has what's called a Kalasarpa yoga, and that means such extremes in life, highs and lows. I always tell people that have this, you know, when you tell your story about your life, people think either you're exaggerating or you're making it all up, because it's usually pretty unbelievable. Now, when we look at this pattern, remember the outer planets aren't actually included in this if they're even calculated in the chart that you're looking at, but all the planets on one side means that this person has a certain life of destiny that causes restrictions with highs but lows, but usually when they hit bottom, they rise to a much higher, more powerful position. So they spring back. And a lot of incredibly powerful people have this. Donald Trump for one, Paul McCartney for another, Sylvester Stallone, George Bush, the young George W. Bush. So I mean, you can see these people had lives that were like radical highs and lows. One minute they're down, the next minute they're as high as you can get. So that's another thing, just glancing and looking at patterns in the chart. If you see most of the planets all conglomerated into one placement, then that means that person's going to be very focused in one area of their life. And I'm talking to people that don't know any astrology. You just see all of these planets. You know this is a very self-contained person. Whereas the opposite is true when all the planets are spread all over the chart. They're scattered. They don't know what to focus in on because they have so many interests. They're not so focalized into one area and one thing. Another thing is when you look at these charts and they're focalized, look and see if they're below the horizon or above the horizon. The horizon being if you draw a line from the ascendant straight across. If all the planets are on the bottom, this person is very introverted and they need their time to be away, to be at home. They're very introverted, although I know they'll have extroverted ways about them, but really, they're introverted and they know it. And if all the planets are on the top 6 houses above the ascendant, then this means that the person is very extroverted and they're always out running around doing things publicly instead of being introverted. And if you have all the planets on one side of the chart, the 6 houses close to the ascendant, then that means that person is more focalized into themselves. They're more about things dealing with personal means and the things that they need. You know, I'd say they're self-centered, but not really. But they're really into self-development, if I could say that. And if you find that all the planets are on the other side of the chart, or most of them, then they're more into being with others and giving and helping other people, whereas on this side is the self, the other side is the non-self. So you can see these patterns if they're all below, if they're all above, if they're on one side or the other side. This tells you so much about their character. And the moon being by itself is huge in terms of how a person feels. Now, another thing that you can spot that's going to be really, really important is when you have all the planets on one side, but you have one planet, such as I was talking about the moon. But let's say it's not the moon. There's another planet that sits outside, and actually it's called like a bucket, because here's the bucket, but that one planet is the handle. That planet becomes very important. And whatever that planet's all about will be so much of a focus throughout their life because everything funnels through that planet. So if it's Mercury, it's the intellect, the learning. If it's Venus, it's the love, the emotion of feeling. If it is Mars, it's going to be this strong sense of courage and ambition and drive. If it's Saturn, it's focus on being responsible and having discipline. If it's Jupiter, it's about learning and it's about something to do with higher education and spirituality. So that planet becomes a very potent focal point in life. If it's the sun, the sun will never do that, actually, because with the sun, you're always going to have Mercury or Venus close to the sun. So you can't ever have the sun in this configuration of the bucket with the handle. So another thing is, if you know a little bit of astrology, aside from what I just discussed, if you have any planet conjunct Rahu or Ketu, focus in on that. That is a destiny point. Remember the nodes, Rahu and Ketu, both really exaggerate things with the planets are next to. And when I mean next to, just in the same sign. And actually, the closer it is to Rahu by degree, the more intense it will be. So if you have Rahu conjunct the sun. The father has issues and problems, usually addictions. And with the sun, this can be a strong ego of that individual. Okay, if you have Rahu with the moon, there's issues and problems around the mother and security. If you have Rahu with Mercury, the mind is overdrive and probably you can be a bit compulsive because the mind never stops thinking. But there's this essence around learning. If it's with Venus, there's this attraction to love and beauty, such as, obsession with beauty products or clothing, everything to do with Venus. So you see, when Rahu's conjunct a planet, there's an obsessional quality to it. So if you have Rahu conjunct Mars, this will be an athlete, somebody that's strong, courageous, but a little bit too impulsive and impatient. If Rahu is conjunct Jupiter, then there'll be this obsession around wealth, money, or spirituality, but there'll be this drive and possibly even be a teacher, guru. If Rahu's with Saturn, this will be an intense need for security, for discipline, and obsessional quality to be in control. And I'm not going to go into the outer planets. I know that they can have meaning, but this is more personalized. And the outer planets I see, yes, they have definite personal meanings, but they're mainly generational. So the more important planets to really focus in on is if you see those planets with Rahu. Now, what if you see a planet very close to Ketu? Ketu has this quality of something not being whole and complete, that there's a drain, something sucking it out. So if you see Ketu with the moon, there's something about this innate spiritual quality, but emotionally something's just missing. And it can even be spirituality. Remember, Ketu can be spirituality. It could be a spiritual mother or a unusual mother. Ketu with the sun, there's a loss of confidence and ego. So this can also mean the father's not there, or the father has problems. Ketu being with Mercury, this is someone that's really intuitive and insightful, and so is Ketu with the moon. Let's say Ketu is with Mercury, yes, the mind is psychic. Ketu with Venus, unquieted love that's never come to its fulfillment. There's something missing. Ketu with Mars, there's some kind of loss around siblings. And also that's Rahu with Mars will be extremes with siblings as well, because Mars is the indicator of siblings. Ketu with Jupiter, intense need to find the truth and spirituality. Or Ketu with Saturn, there's some kind of deep loss somewhere, and always trying to find commitment and always seeking to find the sense of responsibility in life that never seems to come to fruition in some way. So these are really simple ways that the minute you pick up a chart, you should zero in on those things. And you can actually amaze people. And here, you're not even well-versed in astrology. So pick up your own chart. See if you see any of these things. See if it's relevant. I know it will be. So with that, I'd like to close. If you would like more information on me, always remember you can go to my website, which is galacticcenter.org. Sign up for my free newsletter and check out my university website, which is universityofvedicastrology.com. Thank you.